Hello friends, today's topic is draft time. Let's rant.
There's a question I keep getting, maybe even more than any other one right now, and it's this. Are we headed toward a military draft? Now, I'm going to try to give you the answer directly from my typical sort of perspective. Now, most people think of the draft as this exceptional thing that is a relic, maybe something that happened to their grandparents, but present day, there's a lid on it, right? It just doesn't happen anymore. But the United States has a long history of compulsory service. Even the Revolutionary War was sort of a patchwork of state and colonial militia drafts. It wasn't what you would envision as a modern federal draft, but there was no modern federal government then. And the Civil War, the first federal draft in American history, that was men ages 20 to 45. And what happened? Riots followed. And then World War I, we had 2.8 million drafted. And World War II, peacetime draft signed into law before we even entered the war, led to over 10 million that were inducted by the draft. The Korean War, the World War II draft just sort of kept on rolling, and that added another 1.5 million. And then, of course, Vietnam, and that was roughly 1.8 million that were drafted. And you know how that went. So the draft is much more so the rule than the exception. The all-volunteer era that we've sort of encompassed since Vietnam is much more the exception. And even in the one exception that we think of most near to our timeline right now, the global war on terror, it was actually close. In 2004, Congress saw draft legislation and the rumor mill exploded. But the Bush admin publicly said it didn't support reinstating the draft. Election year. Basically, political suicide. So they passed. But they ran stop loss instead. That's the legal authority to freeze a service member's separation and keep redeploying them without consent. And that ran from 2001 through 2011, I think. Stop loss essentially kept service members in uniform and sent them back out again without their clear consent. They wanted to be done. Or some of them at least may have wanted to be. So what is the government actually signaling to us right now? Because that's probably what's most important. Well, the Army just raised the maximum enlistment age from 35 to 42. That becomes effective April 20th. And removed the waiver requirement for recruits with a single conviction for marijuana or drug paraphernalia possession. So those are the moves you make when you need a larger pool. And at the same time, the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit is moving into the region from Okinawa, and the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit has been ordered out from California towards CENTCOM. Roughly 2,200 personnel each, I think. Full infantry air logistics package, basically designed to operate independently in hostile environments. And on top of that, troops from the 82nd Airborne, as you've probably heard, are being sent to the Middle East. Those are paratroopers trained to jump into contested territory and secure key terrain. This is, in many ways, quite possibly an opening move. So based on the publicly reported deployments, we're looking at several thousand additional Marines and paratroopers being positioned in or toward the region. MEUs and 82nd Airborne don't get stacked like this for posturing's sake. And then there's this. When the press secretary was asked directly, mothers are worried their sons are going to be drafted, what do you say? The response was, President Trump wisely, yes, he's very wise, but he wisely does not remove options off the table. That's the answer. This is the same political movement whose 2024 campaign message, including big bolstering speeches from J.D. Vance, was that voting for Donald Trump was the way to avoid war and a possible draft. And 7 months later, the press secretary has now left that option open. So you're seeing the Pentagon cut the required service commitment from 4 years to 2 for troops returning after separations tied to the COVID vaccine mandate. The age ceiling is now going to hit 42, and lovely Secretary Hegseth extended the return to service window for troops separated over the COVID vaccine mandate through April 1st, 2027. These things happen in sequence. Widen the voluntary pool, freeze who's already in, stop loss, recall people who've already separated, and then, last resort, the draft. We're at step 1, and that should at least get your attention. Now here's the structural problem underneath all of this. Well, who enlists? Predominantly young people, Gen Z, and polling on this conflict, and on Israel specifically, has shifted really hard. A Harvard-Harris poll found 60% of Americans aged 18 to 24 siding with Hamas over Israel. And broader polling shows most Americans disapprove of the Iran strikes and believe this war benefits Israel more than the United States. Now you want to ask those same people to enlist. And if that doesn't work, draft them. Now, recruitment improved sharply during and after 2024, but the rebound had already begun before Trump won the election. So no new wars resonated. That was the pitch. That coalition is looking at a fundamentally different situation now. If recruitment craters and the ground operation expands, well, the math stops working with volunteers alone. So to be clear, the threshold, I would say, is probably a full-scale ground invasion aimed at regime change in Iran. Right now, we have airstrikes and troop positioning, but that Harvard-Harris poll found only 7% of Americans supporting putting boots on the ground in Iran. The admin started this war without a congressional authorization, and they haven't shown they particularly care about the polling, I guess. Markets, yes. Polling, no. And for anyone doing the math on their own age, Ukraine has been drafting men up to 60 throughout this war with Russia, I think. And historical American drafts have gone up to 45. So history gives people in their mid-30s and 40s a reason to take this really seriously. This is a fact pattern, and the signals are real, and the history is clear. And the threshold, as I said, I believe, is if we go ground invasion. So watch whether that threshold gets crossed, and we'll just have to go from there. But boy, oh boy, are we in the midst of it.
Are you ready for war? Comment down below and thank you for your time.